Are my parents emotionally abusive? Or am I just crazy? I am pretty new to Reddit. So apologies in advance if I make any mistakes. I am 16 years old, so I feel a bit anxious posting this. I just have a lot to get off of my chest. I want to start off by saying that I do get along with my parents sometimes, and that they aren't always like this. For as long as I can remember, my mother and father always had anger issues. They would constantly get into fights about things, usually about me, and sometimes the fights would get pretty intense. One of their most recent fights involved my mom throwing her drink across the table at my dad, which resulted in him throwing a plate of food at her. When I was younger, I used to hide in my room whenever they would start fighting, and one time I could hear things being broken in their bedroom, though they never discussed it with me ever again. My mother has also bragged about all the fights her and my dad have gotten into, and tells me it's okay to beat your spouse if you're angry with them. She says that she regrets giving me the freedom to choose my hobbies, clothes, etc., and that I should have never been allowed to make decisions for myself. My mother has constantly compared me to my father in a negative way. Such as saying, "You're going to end up just like your father if I didn't want to do something." Criticize the way I look and dress. One time, she threatened to beat me or break my arm if I tried to defend myself when she slapped me. On one occasion, I was attempting to get off of a bed in our camper and she had thought that I was giving her attitude. She then slapped me so hard I lost my balance and fell. Also, she has threatened to cut me off financially if I go into a career that she doesn't like. She constantly complains about me to my dad because I'm not a normal teenager and has said numerous times that she wants to give up on me. She's threatened to leave my father and I more than once, and one time told me I should have been born stupid. Whenever I would try to talk to my mother about my problems, she would always make the conversation about herself. I would talk about how I was sad and lonely and then she would go into this rage about how she can't fix this for me even though I never asked for her help. She has pressured me to have sex at a young age for about 5 years, and says really creepy things like wanting to pay my ex-boyfriend to get me pregnant. I have always wanted to seek counseling/therapy, etc., for many years, but after I went once in 2011, my mother has pretty much said no because she doesn't want to accept the possibility that I may need medication. She has said multiple times that it would devastate her. My father is not as bad as my mother, but he can still be just as bad. He does talk with me about some of these issues between my mom and I, and often agrees with me on some of her interesting behavior, but does not offer much help other than to just be her doormat. On one occasion, my mom and I got into an argument and I implied that I did not like her at that one moment in time. I do feel bad about saying that, and then she tells my dad about this. My dad ended up completely destroying my room and then gave me 1 hour to clean it up. He then comes in a few minutes later and apologizes, but says that he destroyed my room because he loves me. He also says I need to stop being depressed. After yet again another argument, he mocks me for talking about my suicidal thoughts and says that I don't know what real hardship is. I have a lot more stories, but I don't want to make this too long. I have never told anyone about this, but I do vent in a journal. At this point I have depression and anxiety, although I feel like I am slowly getting better at handling it. Both of my parents want me to deal with it on my own. Did anyone else grow up similar to me? I'm making this post because of the whole misconception that child abuse only happens in poor families, bad neighborhoods, to children of divorced parents, or parents who were never married, to children of parents who are alcoholics, drug addicts, etc. For me, that isn't the case at all. Financially, I've always been very privileged. I don't know if I'm considered wealthy, but I'm definitely upper middle class. My father is in the Air Force, and he has a pretty high rank. I won't say what it is though. He works on a base, shocker, LOL, and almost everyone knows who he is. If not almost everyone, then literally everyone. He's well respected, he's charismatic, everyone loves him basically. With my mother, it's kinda similar. She's a professor and she's also highly respected. On the outside, she's kind, funny, generous, etc. For as long as my brothers and I have been alive, my parents have always been married. I'm privileged in that regard too. The thing that pisses me off is that I've always been labeled as lucky. Which is true in a lot of ways, but it feels like my life is basically seen as perfect to other people. Like it's not freaking perfect to have an unpredictable, egotistical father who's beaten me, sat on me, called me inferior, called me an embarrassment and a disappointment, chased me with a belt, basically encouraged me to kill myself, etc. It's not perfect to have a mother who told me that she hates me, that she wishes I was never born, and that she regrets having me in the first place. It's not perfect to be shamed for your weight and body your whole life. To be told that you're useless, pathetic, stupid, repulsive, a pig, a disgrace, etc. I think you get the idea. I don't know, maybe I'm overreacting. The messed up thing is that my parents are well aware that what they're doing is wrong. My mother especially. My parents have worked in mental health facilities before. They've worked with people who are traumatized, and my mother used to be a psychotherapist. She wasn't a good one, but still, LOL. I'm pretty sure they're able to recognize all forms of abuse, but for them, I guess they think that they get a pass because our parents raised us this way and we turned out fine. Did anyone else have a similar upbringing? Am I overreacting? What am I supposed to do, besides wait as my mental and physical health continues to decline? So I've had quite a life. Now, I'm diagnosed with CPTSD, MDD, GAD, bulimia, and OSDD. To summarize, my birth mother was a druggie who lost custody when I was 3 to 5 years old. My ex-stepmom was severely abusive and her son raped me, etc. Birth mom died when I was 10. There's a lot more than that, but moving on. Now, I live with my dad and his girlfriend as well as her kids. We're all 16 to 19. I love them both. She's basically my mom, but dear freaking God. Dear God. She takes our phones seemingly on a whim, snaps all the time over tiny things, talks down to us most of the time, and no matter how many chores we do she never seems to be satisfied. Oh, and when you talk to her, she cannot be wrong, ever. The other day she told me to stop saying something to my brother so she could tell him the exact same thing. This pissed me off, but that's not the worst of it. She's told me, on multiple occasions, that my perception of reality is incredibly warped. She's accused all of us kids of gaslighting her over chores, making her feel worthless. Even my dad has admitted she overreacts, but if he tries to interfere she gets furious with him. She has openly insulted us for years, saying we are disrespectful, ungrateful, selfish, irresponsible, lazy, etc. But when I point out that these are insults, she claims they aren't because they're not targeted at me specifically, and it's just the truth. Like, okay. Oh, and if I try to talk to her about what's bothering me, she likes to play devil's advocate and make me doubt my actions and feelings. But still, this isn't the worst part. For about 3 years now I've had health issues. They started with an inability to shower or bathe without almost passing out, my heart rate getting over 180 bpm. Now standing or walking for more than 5 to 10 minutes makes my whole body shaky and weak. Showers are extremely difficult, because within a few minutes my arms feel too exhausted to even continue washing my hair, my legs too exhausted to keep me up. And yet I do all the chores I'm asked because I want to be able to do these things. I want to be able to go up and down steps without feeling like I'm gonna fall over and hyperventilate, being cold and hot like I have a fever all the time, constantly sweating to the point that I'll be dripping sweat from just standing, etc. I've told my mother these things, repeatedly. She dismisses it as anxiety. I've been worried that it's POTS, because I show every single symptom, but she has told me POTS doesn't raise your heart rate. There is no treatment for POTS. Even if there were, they wouldn't give a 16-year-old it. It's just your anxiety. All of these are laughably false. I've cried in front of her because I felt so dismissed. Even my doc said it's anxiety, then had me do a pulmonary test even when I explained it wasn't my breathing that was causing issues, and I got an inhaler which just made my hands and feet tingle but did not help at all. I'm 16. 15 months till I can move out. I don't know what to do. Still trying to mentally recover from leaving with my dad and stepmom. Just to note, this all went down when I was 16, and I'm 27, female. I still have the occasional nightmares about the incident. Anyways, when I was 16 I lived with my shitty dad and awful stepmom. She would go through my room to try and find anything to get me in trouble. My dad on the other hand was an unemployed psychopath that would call me awful names. I told my friends that he had a funny sense of humor. This one particular day we made some steaks and I accidentally ate one of my brothers. My dad got mad at me and demanded that I made him another one. He was yelling at me, "You stupid fat idiot, how could you be so stupid, yada yada," and turned to him and said, "I get it, you don't need to lecture me." And he got so mad and said, "What the F did you say to me?" He charged at me and shoved me to the ground. I smacked my head on the ground so it was difficult to get up right away. As I did, he was standing over me yelling at me some stuff. I was too much in a daze to hear or remember what he said. When I finally got up I yelled, "Don't touch me," and ran to my room to pack what I needed. Meds, clothes, pads, the works. After I got done packing my things I headed for the door as fast as I could. I heard behind me, "Where the hell are you going?" I got through the door and slammed it shut. When I got outside I heard him behind me. Not even a second later, he put me in a headlock tightly. I tried to fight my way out and tried screaming for help, with my head still woozy and I couldn't breathe. I thought I was going to die there and then. Then he threw me on the ground hard. "Get back in the freaking house." With what comprehension I had left, I had to leave my pack with my stuff scattered around the front lawn. I made my way as far away as I could. All I had was my tiny juke phone with no service. I called the police. I wasn't the smartest kid. I tried to pose as one of my friends that lived in the same neighborhood as me. Question: why didn't you just go to your friends? Answer: I didn't want to go to a place where my dad and stepmom were close by. Instead of telling the police what happened I just said, there was a disturbance. My head was still swimming in pain and I was scared to death to think straight. Luckily one of my friend's mom took me in right away after I told her what happened. She was driving around the area I was crying and hiding and saw I was distressed. I stayed there for a few days, until someone tipped off the police where I was. When they arrived I told them exactly what happened. They didn't believe me. My stepmom lied to them and told them I was mentally unstable. I did everything I could to not go back, even my friend and her mom were telling them they couldn't take me back to that awful place. They still took me back. I was shocked and broken. A day after my stepmom made the decision that they were going to send me to a children's mental institution called Shodare in a place called Missoula, and have me committed for a year. I wanted to die. To be clear, I was on antidepressants and ADD medication at the time. As soon as you go in, they do a mental evaluation and give you mood stabilizers. I hated them. I was just sitting there blankly when I was on them. Luckily I got to make a phone call and I called my mom right away. She was so mad, upset, and shocked that it happened to me. In a heartbeat she and my 5 siblings made a 5-hour-long drive to come get me out of there. I'm so happy I have a mother like her. She took me out of there even when the doctor said I was leaving against medical orders. My mom told her to go screw herself. Sometimes I get flashbacks to what went on all those years ago. I have no communication with either my stepmom or dad. To be honest, after my dad kicks the bucket, I'm going to have a big old party. I lived in Anaconda, Montana at the time and in a small neighborhood. The stepmom's name is Amy, and my dad's is Garrett. We lived on Chestnut Street at the end of the street. I told everyone that listened to me this story. Hopefully I will get through the trauma mentally and recover. Thanks for listening. Am I actually just too sensitive? I feel so terrible after spending time with my father today. I haven't seen him in about a year. During that time period we have texted now and again, and we have talked on the phone. But I feel like the most logical thing would be to explain the backstory first. When I was young I thought of my dad as my hero. He was so good at doing things with my sister and I, taking us places, inventing fun games and all that. I'm not sure where things changed. Maybe when he met my stepmom when I was 7. My parents divorced a year before that. Anyhow, what I do remember is, that as time went by, he was worse and worse with invalidating my feelings. I am very sensitive by nature, also very kind, polite and empathic, but he always told me, that I was too sensitive. That I should stop feeling sorry for myself, and that I was a martyr and drama queen. He would get angry at me and have massive consequences for the most simple things. Like forgetting to turn off the radiator or forgetting to wipe crumbs off the table in the morning. And even though I apologized profusely, he would tell me that I was a spoiled brat and a martyr. He was convinced that I didn't forget things. He believed I did it on purpose and would never listen to me explain. And I really don't think I was egotistical, spoiled, or a brat. My mom can attest to this. My stepmom would also get angry about the most ridiculous things, but would not tell me why. Instead, she would ignore me completely for several days. Complete silent treatment, like I was invisible even though we were in the same house, until she exploded in anger and would hear no explanations or talk with me about it. Over time, they made me believe I was a worthless, horrible person. I lost the ability to trust my own feelings and intuitions, as they taught me that their interpretations of my feelings was the only right way. They would on purpose wind me up, and when I got upset, tell me that I made life difficult for everyone around me, and that I was so dramatic. I cannot in any way remember them ever supporting me, trying to understand me, or saying anything positive about me. I lost every ounce of self-worth and became so messed up. Because on one hand I knew I was kind, polite, helped around the house, never swore at home, did my best and so on, which others also thought of me. But then they told me I was the complete opposite of those things, and in the end, I believed them. My father would also say horrible things by text, but then pretend nothing had happened when we saw each other. I was nauseous and felt so bad every time I went to his house. Every time I walked through the door, my heart pounded as I thought, what have I done wrong this time? I have tried to talk to them about this as an adult, but every time they throw it back in my face and make me feel like I'm a horrible person. So, back to today. He visited for 4 hours. Not even once in those 4 hours did he ask me about anything. He showed no interest in my life at all. Only talked about what was going on in his. He invalidated me multiple times. Made me look bad in front of my kid. I had told my son no about something. He did it anyway. My dad laughed at me and said to my son, "Look. Your mother is absolutely no fun and has no humor." He made several small jabs at me, and when he left I broke down crying in front of my husband. I felt absolutely insignificant and worthless. I had to text my mom and ask what she truly thought of me, because he made me doubt myself. And I just don't know what to do. I have tried to cut him out of my life before, but I felt so guilty because I sometimes still see glimpses of the fun, loving, and attentive dad I remember from my early childhood years. I also know he suffers from depression, and I don't want to make things worse. He doesn't have a lot of family and friends. They live abroad, same culture, European, so I'm scared of making him lonely. I feel a big sense of obligation and feel so torn and confused. I just needed to tell my story. Maybe get your thoughts. Because part of me still believes what he has always told me. That I'm just being too sensitive. But I'm pretty sure I'm now supposed to feel like this after spending time with him.